Okay, hello everyone, and welcome back to Rouse Trapped Queens variant. This is going to be actually the first video discussing specific theory in this opening. The first video on this opening entirely was an introduction video where we discussed the key themes and ideas in the position, as well as showed some sample games and also showed some basic theory. So getting into our video, we're going to cover theory with 1e4. So generally there are three sort of best moves that white can play, which are e4, d4, and g3 to start the game. So this video we're going to be covering one e4, and it's worth noting that in this position, uh, there are a lot of moves that work for both sides. But especially focusing from White's perspective, White is trying to play for the win. So when you're seeing the game, there are a lot of variations that are completely even. But as in White can play a lot of different things, but there are a certain amount of things that White can play that would be able to keep them an advantage instead of just being equal. So right now we're going to cover e4. So let's just get right into it. So e4, and we'll cover e5 and e6. E5 is the most common response, so e4, e5. Um, Here we play bishop e2 as white because we're looking to go to d1 and then to take on b3 to free our queen. So Black will copy this, and in the introduction video we actually showed what happened after bishop d1, where white just tries to go directly for freeing their queen right away with their bishop. Of course, sometimes you can also free your queen with the rook, but if you can sacrifice a bishop, it's probably better in most cases because the bishop is worth 3 points, the rook is worth 5, and normally the rook will be better than the bishop. So yeah, so I covered that in the introduction video, so I'm not going to go over that right now. But basically, the summary of that is that if you do that, it's around equal the game. So white can play for an advantage with a move such as castling, or they can also play d4 here. So we're first gonna cover castling. So that's the main move here. So white castles, brings their king to safety, prepares to connect the rooks. And over here, black can do they can castle. They can also play d6. And so on. So actually discovering this side variation with d6 to protect their e5 pawn. We can play d4. So you'll see in this opening there are common pawn sacrifices. So basically the idea behind d4 in this variation is basically we're sacrificing a pawn to do two things. So first thing is we want to free our bishop. So to play for the advantage over here, tempo is really important. So we play d4 to free our bishop. We're also keeping this bishop staring at the queen. So if we were to play d3 instead of d4 to develop the bishop, then we'd block our bishop. Also, if white takes, we have the ability to play f4 and increase our control of the center. We could also play rook d1 eventually and win back the d4 pawn. Although black can play bishop f6 at some points defending it. So if black accepts this gambit, we right away play rook d1 over here. After bishop f6 defending the pawn, then we play bishop f4. We're now attacking the d6 pawn. Bishop e5 defends that. We take, and then we play rook dc1. And the idea actually is that we are down a pawn, but we're combining our bishop's threats over here. This pawn is going to be weak, the b5 pawn, and the rook is coming to c5. And with the dark squared bishops traded off the board, white is going to have c5 uncontested. And the advantage white gets from sacrificing this pawn here is that, look, black's bishop on c8 hasn't moved, which means this rook is weak. So, for example, if we were to play bishop d7 to protect this b5 pawn, after rook c5, uh, uh, if we actually, so there's actually an interesting tactic when we showed some of this in the introduction video. If black tries to trade off, this would be a mistake, as after we take, oh yeah, we could also just play bishop takes b5 and then promote. So we have control of the file, therefore black decides to castle, and we can actually take on e5 over here. So if black plays f6, now we see, so rook c7 and rook takes a2. Let's see, rook c7 bishop. Computer is kind of choosing between two things, but the idea over here is that we can play rook takes, because if black takes back after queen takes a2, we're blocking black's king from safety. If black were to play something like king e7, in this position we could play rook c7, and our queen is coming into d5. So black wasn't able to get their king to safety, so we can break through this way. And if black castles instead, then we can just that's actually black's best move over here. And after I'm thinking after rook takes e5, we gain back our pawn. And now if we want to bring our rook, like black wants to bring their rook in, um, rook d5. Yeah, so we were able to just gain back our material. Black's actually able to defend this b5 pawn, but it's at the cost of likely both of their pawns. Maybe, yeah, likely both of these pawns, and white can be up a pawn here, so they're better here. So that's after 3d6, and we saw that white has a sacrifice with d4, and that's white's way to play for the win there. But black can also sacrifice and play 3d5. So going back, we developed, castled, and then black played d5. So over here, black is trying a similar gambit. However, like in this opening, it's very important to have the tempo advantage. So since white started first, they're upper tempo, so it's not going to be exactly the same as before. So we take, and then you'll notice that black gets their king to safety first. After we play bishop d1, we're going for the sacrifice. Now bishop f5, take, queen takes, and black and white should be a bit better over here. And as in the introduction video, we showed that this b4 pawn will be weak because the bishop is staring at it, but we have our queen freed, so white should be a bit better here. So going back, if d6 and we play d4, takes rook d1. If bishop d8 over here, so we're trying to go for the same idea as white went for with when black played the central gambit. After rook takes d4, we can't do this, I think. Let me see. And then we have b5, so now we're attacking this b5 pawn, twice. Bishop d7, bishop e3, attacking the queen and also defending the a7 pawn. Queen goes to a6, and rook ad1 aims at this d6 pawn. So we can see that because we had the one tempo extra, black can't do the same. We're going to gain too much pressure. So that's why, well, actually those are sidelines, but the main line over here is that after white castles, black just copies the move and they castle themselves. So now, after castles, now white plays d4 as we have seen, except that this we've seen with the d6 line. So after d4, there are a couple things that black can play. I actually think e takes d4 is the best, but let's just look at d5. So black can kind of counter sacrifice in the center. So you'll see that these pawn sacrifices for a better development are very important in this opening. So after d5, supported, we play e takes d5. After e takes d4, so the game is completely symmetrical so far. Bishop d1, bishop f5, takes, rook ac8, bishop e2, rook c2, rook fd1, d3, and we see after this position that white should be slightly better. white has a like the b4 pawn's under attack, but white has a defense on it. Black has this very strong pawn on d3, and that's solidifying their rook. The bishop is staring over here. We're gonna play rook takes a2 and just pick up this pawn. And yeah, we're looking pretty good over here, as we are basically up the queen, and black can't really win the b4 pawn, so they'd have to sacrifice something to free their own queen. And I think they can't do that right away. Let's see. So it's white's move. If white takes and then the bishop goes to d8. Let's just play what they said the computer likes. The computer likes bishop e3 here. Yeah, bishop e3, and it stops the sacrifice over there. Over rook e8 is interesting. Maybe king f1, d6, king f1. I'm wondering if black's going to sacrifice the exchange to try to free their queen. That's one line, so let's see. Rook takes d3. Takes c3. If now black goes for the sacrifice, well, actually black can't, because after takes, this pawn is going to promote. So yeah, black is not able to free their queen very easily. So even in this line, bishop e4 would kind of like be attacking the king, which is why that sacrifice, because now the rook stares at this pawn. However, we have rook takes d3 here. So yeah, it's not going to work over here. So yeah, white should be a bit better over here in this position. So after 4d4, so both sides castle, and after 4d4, meantime here is e takes d4, so black accepts white's gambit. We have rook d1, bishop f6, bishop f4, and now black can't play bishop e5, because before with the d6 variation, black's pawn was on d6. So black has to do something else. They play rook e8 attacking our pawn. And now we have two good options over here, which are bishop f3 and bishop d3. So bishop d3 here is the main move, I think. Both are good, but let's look at bishop f3, because bishop f3 looks like we can get some bishops staring together like down the board, which would put some pressure on black, and it does. So after d6 over here, so that's an interesting move. So black plays d6, which is a free pawn for white can just take it, but black's looking to maybe develop their bishop, and they have to move the pawn to develop their bishop, and piece development is very important here, so they're going to sacrifice the pawn. So after we take, so now the pawns are even. Bishop d7, e5. So actually e5 is interesting because that's another sacrifice. So let's see over here that this position is quite complex with the sacrifices. And the idea of, we can also play just bishop c5 over here, which bishop c5 is always an interesting move in these types of positions for white. And I most times like it because white's bishop cannot be cut off from the defense of these pawns, and it makes it extremely hard for black to sacrifice. So yeah, that can also be played. But interesting is this move e5. So black accepts this, but it's actually not a sacrifice, because white takes back on d4. So you might think that this game is now completely even, because it looks like both sides have symmetrical pawn structures. They both each have a rook, two rooks, and a bishop and everything. So you might think this is completely even. However, white has the chances in this variation, because if you notice, both sides have the light squared bishops. So actually, I'll highlight this one in red, because white's bishop is going to be like the good bishop and black's going to be the bad bishop, because black's bishop, like, it can defend the pawns from like a sacrifice, but white's bishop is the one that can like sacrifice. If you notice, like, black would have to sacrifice a dark squared bishop to free their queen. If they're sacrificing a bishop, white would have to sacrifice a light squared. So if both of them have light squared bishops on the board, then white should be on the attack over here. So bishop c6, so black would like to trade off these bishops, because white's bishop is better than black's bishop. And so, but over here, white doesn't have an, so the thing with this position is white doesn't have is not able to, they won't be able to sacrifice their bishop to free, or maybe they will. Actually, they won't, because they would have to sacrifice something like from going to d1. However, there's like a mate threat right now. So it's hard for white to do that in this position. So one thing that white can do is just is let black trade the bishops and play this, because white has the two rooks that are staring that are connected. However, this position should be around equal. So instead we have bishop takes c6, which is a really interesting move, uh, because in this position you think like bishop takes c6, and after b takes c6, this black queen is just free, like is going to get free, right? The idea over here is that we play rook d7, so this queen can't get out. So notice that if black were to play queen c8 over here, then we have this great move b7, and white is completely winning, because if black tries to take on d7, then white is just going to promote. And if black if black doesn't do that, if black plays like queen e8 over here, um, b takes a8 equals queen, yeah, white can get the promotion off. So looking at this position, black's queen is kind of still trapped. So we have rook ae8, which is basically trying to get the queen out, because now b7 wouldn't fork the queen and the rook if the queen moves. However, we have h3 over here, which is just trying to prevent any back rank mates. Rook e1 check, rook takes, king goes to h2, and black would really like to promote to a queen over here. However, the king is weak over here. So and over here, if black were to try to keep this alive and play something like g6 um, after rook d8, and white's going to promote first. And also the idea with bishop takes c6 is that this b6 pawn also comes to life. So if we were to play something like this, and then black were to also to a queen, and we take, and we think, okay, both sides like even material still, no, white has this b7, which is why white's like promotion threats are more important. Over here, rook has to go to e8. That's the only move, which defends against rook d8 check. And after here we have a game. So that's where the theory over here ends. You can see the computer so far likes g4 and h4. However, right now it looks like I have Stockfish 11. So I was signed, like I'm not signed in right now. I was signed into chess.com before, when like I would be checking these variations with the engine. So with Stockfish 15, like this is, I think white has slight chances over here to play for the win, but it's definitely an imbalanced game. Black could draw this one maybe, because if white kind of moves the rook from here, then the queen's gonna get out. So uh, like right now, for example, if let's say g4, the queen still can't get out, because there's still b7 threats. So, however, this isn't like as bad as before, because the rook is not being attacked too. So once queen takes d7, b8 equals queen. We see that after queen d8 or queen c8, something like that, we see that if we trade off, then black's going to win this a7 pawn. So we have to move back to like f4, and if the queen goes back to a8, queen 7. So we kind of just going to keep trying to protect the pawn and should be drawn over here. So perhaps black can go for something like that, but if black doesn't go for something like that, then they can try over here. They can try c5 maybe, and the idea is that if white were to take, then black can take on a5. So white can't really take over here. And if black were to take and white were to take, then black's gonna promote over here. So over here maybe it could be like g5. I'm wondering why this doesn't just win. Queen takes b4. We promote to a queen. Queen e7, and yeah, we're gonna if takes, we're gonna mate, and if the queen moves, we're gonna checkmate anyway. So yeah, it's a very tactical position still. So yeah, that's where the position can end up after bishop f3. Um, and I think so. Maybe white is the one playing a bit for a win, but I think black has a draw over here. But our main move over here is going to be bishop d3, not bishop f3. So just going back, um, both sides developed castles. White sacrificed and then played bishop d3 here. So in the bishop f3 line, white was able to regain their pawn. Let's see what happens after bishop d3. So rook e6. So that's a very interesting move. So you notice over here that if bishop f3 and then rook e6, because rook e6 is an interesting move. It like looks to maybe sacrifice over here, and you'll notice in the bishop f3 line, black just sacrificed a pawn with d6, and then the bishop took. Now rook e6 also stops that. But over here, bishop b8 is just really good. So what bishop b8 in some of these lines does, it's really good because it prevents the rook from taking over here, but also it kind of traps this rook in the corner unless it wants to sacrifice. And right now it can't sacrifice right away because white's going to promote over here. So it's a good move that kind of immobilizes black's pieces. And now you'll see that, okay, if d6, if rook dc1, rook e8, bishop takes d6, and the reason why so white's actually going to just get the pawn anyways, and then when they play something like e5, this bishop is going to be more active over here, which is why that in this bishop f3 line we didn't have rook e6. But when bishop goes to d3, the bishop is not on this diagonal, so rook e6 is something that can be played. However, so if we went with the bishop f3 line and then d6 and then white just took, if bishop d3 and now d6, bishop takes d6, bishop d7, f4. So you'll see that that's the difference. So black can't just sacrifice. Well, I mean, it's still playable, but black probably wouldn't want to just sacrifice the pawn there because before on with the bishop f3 line, when white's bishop was on f3, f4 wasn't a possible move. Now f4 is, and it's threatening e5. And black doesn't have f6, at least not right away, to stop that because the bishop is over here. So white should be having a significant advantage here. So that's why after bishop d3, rook e6 is the main move over here. Bishop b8, so we've seen that idea before. So now d6 is played, and white can't take on d6 because the rook is defending it. We have rook ac1. So you'll see that this rook on e6, while it's doing a good job, it's also maybe slightly blocking out this bishop. However, the bishop likely goes to d7 in these lines anyways. Rook c7, so you're seeing that white is bringing their rook in, and now white would like to have a bishop on f3 here because they would like to be attacking this b7 pawn. So the rook has to defend over here, and notice that when the rook's on c7, white's bishop cannot take on d6. So when the rook goes to e7 over here, that's still fine. We have f4. So you'll see white is really pushing over here. Now they have, but this pawn is d6 is still here, which kind of prevents e5. So that's how black is hanging on here. g6 is played. G6 is played to give the king breathing room to discourage f5 over here and to maybe bring the bishop back so we could move this f pawn. Rook goes to e1 over here, so we're trying to push for e5 as white. So that's that. And if 12 e5, so if we just play e5 right now, that's also playable. So actually we notice after d takes e5, f takes e5, we don't want to take over here because we have bishop takes d7, rook takes d7, and after rook takes d7, we are now going to be having two bishops for the rook, which is normally good in this position as our bishops are alive, they're very strong, and so after something like rook e7, bishop can go back to b8. Maybe the bishop can take on b5 at some point, and then so the bishop could take up b5 at some point, and then when the queen takes back, this pawn can promote. So there's lots of ideas for white over here, so we don't want to do that. So the move over here is bishop g5. We have h4 over here, which is a computer move. I would not think of playing that move, but basically the idea is that we want to we want to have more free space for a king, but also because we don't want after bishop. We maybe don't want our king to go over here because there could be rook ideas over here. So I just have h4 over here, bishop e4, but you don't have to play h4. So in this position, perhaps something more practical would be like h3 or just bishop e4. But after bishop e4 over here, bishop c6, rook takes, bishop g5, looking to fork the king and rook. That's where my theory over here ends. But yeah, something just moving the king, and you can see over here it should be so this is Stockfish 11, but I think Stockfish 15. White has maybe slight chances to play for the advantage, but even if this position is even, it's still very, very tactically complex. So you'll see that these openings are very like positionally, like lots of positional pawn sacrifices and things like that, but eventually they turn up in very, very tactical positions. A lot of pieces are hanging. There aren't imbalance in the pieces themselves, but in the placements of the pieces there definitely are. There's bishop over here sitting on b8. It's blocking this rook. And white's king is kind of like, there's 3 pawns around black's king. White's king is here in front of 1 pawn. There's tension over here. There's tension over here. This pawn maybe could be falling. White could like sacrifice something. There's a lot of play to be had from this position. So that's like what the theory can get to. Going back, a10, rook c7, queen takes a4 doesn't work because d3 takes b2, rook c7. So if we take over here, yeah, it's around I think it's around even, or black should actually be better with d2 over here. Yeah, so this is another tactic that doesn't actually work over here for white. So yeah, that's a bishop d3 line, so the difference between the bishop f3 and the bishop d3 line, which are both very much playable, is that the bishop f3 line, uh, you try to seek to have like more play along these diagonals and team up your bishops. With the bishop d3 line, you want to move this bishop and you want to play f4 and look around for e5. And I think I showed, so over here, right? Yeah, I showed the line with e5. That was the line I was just looking at. However, rook e1, white can play to support e5 over here. And sorry, after rook e1 we have so this is the main line, and yeah, so I have just up to here, so maybe that line was like even with just e5 right away, but over here, king g7, maybe, like, let's play how this could go, and you see that there isn't really any best move over here, but we want to maybe eventually at some point play e5, but we don't want to rush it, as we just want to try to play for advantage here. So maybe something like even king f2, we want to improve our pieces, and then at some point we want to play e5. And if we do it correctly, I don't think this is winning, but white should definitely be playing for the advantage in this position. I think this is very, very nice. The bishop, which blocks this rook over here. And so yeah, that's basically all the theory I have for 1e4. Actually, no, that's not all the theory I have for e4, because I just showed you e4, e5. But there's a couple things else to show. So that was the main line. Also, did I show d3? Oh yeah, I don't think I didn't show d3 either. So after e4, e5, white can play d3 as a move, and black can sacrifice with d5. So I'll just quickly I'll go through this. So d5, e takes d5, bishop f5. So black is trying to get active. And I think right now Stockfish 11 is showing that black is better, but with Stockfish 15 and a higher depth, white has chances over here. Bishop e2, rook d8, so black's going to try to win this back. White castles, bishop e7, so black prioritizes developing pieces over regaining the pawn, but it's worth noting that bishop f3 to defend it loses d3 pawn. So now after rook e1, so white is looking to gain control over here. We have rook d5, now bishop f3, and interesting over here is that rook takes d3 is not played, and the reason it's not played is because just rook takes e5 and I think because white is still trying to bring something to b8 over here. But let's check the main line. So the main line without taking is rook d7. Rook takes e5, bishop takes d3, and yeah, so just a slight difference in the moves. We want to take with the bishop instead of the rook. The bishop is more active on this d3 square and also defends b5. So bishop e3 or bishop f4. So bishop f4, castles, bishop g4, f5, bishop f3, bishop f6, and you'll see over here that it's mostly symmetrical over here. Rook e1 over here apparently computer likes, and I think the slight advantage that maybe white has is dependent on these bishops cooperating more than black's bishops. That's bishop f4. Bishop e3. We have castles, bishop c5. So getting a bishop to c5 is good over here. We also want to trade off our typically worse bishop for black's better bishop, because this is the one that black can sacrifice. So we have to sacrifice our large squares after takes. Switches. This is what I like as a main line. I think white should be playing for the advantage here due to the better bishop that white has, and black should try to trade that off. So that was a line with d3. But I wanted to go over a couple of things. So first of all, g6. So this is like a sideline. So I've said that for white, like g3 is like an opening move that white could start with. So if black tries to go for a g6, it's playable, but I don't think it's the greatest because of the tempo thing as well. Because obviously, if g3 is very good as an opening move for white, then responding after 1e4 to g6 for black, if it's not as good, it's because of the tempo. So I just showed a sample line over here, and white's going to get the sacrifice off, and yeah, so it's not the greatest setup for black. But what I really wanted to cover as the second move that white could play is e6. So after e4, black can start with e6, and this move is actually fairly common. So e4, e6, we have bishop e2. So actually, we can also play d4 over here. So after d4, d5, and like I prefer not this move to play d4 anyways. I think it's maybe more even, because after d5, the problem is that if we play for d5, which looks like a natural move, as we're just gaining more space. After bishop e7, h4, bishop d8, h5, h6, bishop 3. Black's gonna get the sacrifice off, and our pawn on d4 blocks this bishop from defending over here. And if we were to instead of h4, if we were to just like try to copy and also free our queen, it's not the greatest, because black is just going to be one step ahead. So if we just look over here, and also our d4 pawn is hanging, but in this movie, when queen takes a7 is good, and you'll see that if both sides like copy each other and then they try to free their pieces, like this is a very common theme where we take, and what we want to do is we want to like the side that takes first just doubles their pieces so that the other side cannot take on the corresponding pawn, and so black will definitely just be better over here. So that is why after so I had this line as shown, but still better for black. Yeah, should be slightly better for black over here. White's going to try to like double rooks maybe over here, but this d4 pawn's weak, so I don't think white should go for something like this. And so that's why after d5, if we're not going to play e5, then takes is the main line. And if we play bishop d3, which looks like we don't want to just take and give black like the center pawn, like after only moving the pawn one square to have symmetrical pawn structure. However, takes, just I think white just lost their advantage in this position. It should be completely equal, because white would like to get a bishop to like f4 and then like b8 like we've seen before, but black has bishop d6 over here, and this pawn is like an isolated pawn and also blocks defense over here, so I think it should just be even. So that's why we have to take. So after e takes d5, e takes d5, bishop f4, bishop f5, 2, bishop e7, castles, castles. So both sides are just copying each other, and I have in this, like, see, it's completely even game. So that's why after e4, e6, the most logical thing to do, which is d4, is actually just drawn at best for white. So I think over here, bishop e2 is what you should go for. Bishop e7, bishop d1, and so white should just go for freeing their queen over here. So before, when it was like, if it's e4, e5, and then both sides just try to go to free their queen, it's even, as I've shown in the introduction video. But over here, our pawn on e4 is more advanced than white's pawn on e6 over here, and also blocks the bishop. So now we can just, both of us, go for freeing our queens over here, and white will have an advantage to play for. However, so if I just quickly show bishop d8, and you'll see that idea, queen takes a2, and we have our strong pieces, and white is definitely way better over here because this pawn is going to be an asset and black won't be able to win it over here. So even though it's opposite colored bishops, we definitely have the advantage here as white. So that is why over here black plays d5 instead. We take, and then we free our queen. Black plays d4 to try and just get some play. Castles, queen e3, anticipating bishop e6, rook e8, and in this position, I think that black's development isn't good enough to minimize the advantage of white's freed queen. I think that white being able to free the queen is very good over here. So yeah, that's why. So after e4, e6, I actually don't think it's the greatest chance for black. It's still okay, but as you can see, if white just knows how to play it, white can definitely gain an advantage from this opening. So yeah, but you have to know, not to play d4, which looks so natural here, but d4 and black's e6 move is justified. And so now I think that's all I wanted to show for the theory with e4. Yes, that's what I want to show with the theory with e4. I think it's some very interesting ideas for white. White has to know like the theory in order to play for the advantage. I just have the main line over here, and let me just go to the final position that I showed over here. You can see that the position becomes quite complex with imbalances in pawn structure, bishop placement, and the queens are still normally trapped at the end of some of these main lines, but everything's kind of hanging on the edge. You have to be very careful, and you have to and in this position you kind of have to be open to pawn sacrifices in order for activity, but you still, looking at the main line here, you still want to develop your pieces. So the idea is you want to develop your pieces is probably the most important thing, as well as central control. So develop your pieces, central control, those are more important than material. Then you want to free your queen after you've probably done something like solidified your control over the center and develop pieces. You want to like free your queen. So that's the theory with e4. That's the theory with e4. And in the next video, I'm going to go over theory with d4, and then I'm going to go over theory with g3. And yeah, so it should only be 2 more videos for this position, as those are the main opening moves. And yeah, so I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.